Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to It's Rainmaking Time. This is Kim Greenhouse. It gives me great pleasure to bring the master of science of light, David Olszewski, to It's Rainmaking Time. David is founder of the Light Energy Company, which is about to experience its 25th anniversary. He is an expert on the science of light, on lighting itself, everything you ever want to know about light. He speaks all over the world at conferences to educate people. He's aware of how to heal with light. He's a natural-born healer. And we're going to talk about everything that's going to impact you that we can talk about today to help you in the area of light. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome David Olszewski to It's Rainmaking Time. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Kim.
Thanks for coming back after 6 years. It's wild, isn't it?
Well, and so many things have not changed in 6 years, and then there are a few new surprises. So the people who are tuning in now are going to get a little up-to-date current status of things like, what about your compact fluorescent lights?
Let's talk about that. That's a big, heated topic. I know it has been with me. And I know that many of us are confused and are upset about Congress putting in laws to change the lighting that we use. Give us a sense of whether this is a good or a bad thing, or is it a mixed bulb?
Like everything in life, it's a mixed bag. The law that you're referring to literally says that by the end of December 2012, which I think's an interesting date anyway, by the end of that year, lighting has to achieve a certain efficiency. The concept is we're decreasing the use of electricity, and therefore, by that date, we have to achieve certain low-power limits. And one of the things in the world today that is very low-power consuming is a compact fluorescent bulb. And one of the things that are the highest consuming are incandescent bulbs and, halogen bulbs. And these are really high consuming power. So really what they're telling you to do is manufacturers find a way to make low power. Now, the brunt of that is falling on the compact fluorescents. And so that's why the push, everybody thinks there's a push, you have to have these, and pretty soon you're not going to be able to buy an incandescent. So the game is, what is the real story about compact fluorescents? Because the latest thing that's popping up around is, wow, toxic, mercury, you got to handle these with kid gloves. If one drops, you have to rush to your hazmat and get it cleaned up. Well, there, I think, is the myth part of it. There is mercury in compact fluorescents, but it is a minimal amount of mercury that's required in it to make the phosphors ignite in a fluorescent bulb. You need to have that. But it is such a low amount that if bulbs were to break in front of me right now, a tub full of them, I would not be concerned about the mercury coming out of it.
That's good to hear, David.
So on one side, the toxicity, it's there, but my gosh, our exposure to mercury in the outside world around us is so many orders of magnitude higher than what you could get from the bulb that it's kind of ludicrous. So basically, that should not be a reason to not buy compact fluorescents. So that's I think that's the take on it at this point. From my point of view, is until they come up with something like the bulbs made out of light-emitting diodes, little LED lights that instead of that last 80 years on your light bulb. When those come along, that'll supplant a better efficiency than compact fluorescents. And I think it's going to happen. You know, Today, it costs you $70 to buy an LED light bulb, which is simply a bulb made out of many, many LED lights in it, little small LED lights. It's so expensive, but that'll eventually come down, and then pretty soon people will have the alternative of buying LED lights. And the compact fluorescents will start diminishing at that point. And the problem I see with the diminishing of compact fluorescents and fluorescents in general, if you project down ahead to the LED lights coming in, is that we will lose an ability to create the equivalent of sunlight indoors.
Talk about that. Explain that to the public. What do you mean by that?
Okay. We get sunlight, and sunlight is essential to life on this planet. And people who don't get sunlight essentially have seasonal depression. They have all sorts of lowered immune systems. There's a lot of things that happen when you don't get sunlight. So our objective is to have a minimum amount of sunlight each day. Well, if you don't get it, many people don't get it. They live in town, in cities. They're indoors all the time. They basically don't get their equivalent of sunlight. So for those people, the compact fluorescent, full-spectrum fluorescent-type lights are a source, an equivalent source of getting sunlight indoors. And as that diminishes, then there is less opportunity for them to compensate for lack of sunlight. And not only that, but some of the UV, which is an essential component of sunlight, is in fluorescent full-spectrum lights, and they're now actually reducing the UV in those areas. So even with the compact fluorescents, we're losing some of the UV also. It's still maintained in the larger tubes, the fixtures that you see. They usually have that amount of UV in it. So what's happening here is we need a source of equivalent sunlight. Better yet, it's nice to go out in sunlight, but if you can't do it, as millions are affected by this lack of sunlight, you need to have an alternative. And the only way to produce that alternative is in a fluorescent technology.
Do you think it'll always be that way? That the only way to do it is within a fluorescent technology, and is it okay?
Well, being an electronics engineer, and I don't say it'll always be that way. For instance, incandescent light today, which is awful, and we'll be discussing incandescent light, it's awful, and it consumes a lot of power. But I think with the challenge of that new law out there, there's going to be a lot of manufacturers that are going to try to make lower power-consuming incandescent lights. So, and that technology isn't here yet, but they're working on it. So I think that there may be other forms of light creation that are going to be able to, quote, mimic the pattern of sunlight, and that may come along. And certainly the human species has a way of trying to duplicate everything in nature.
Well, talk about full spectrum, because everywhere I go, when I go to visit people, when I go to meet with them, and wherever I'm going in buildings and in homes, it's this yellow, bright light. Talk about that as compared to full spectrum. Okay.
Let me give you a background first, Kim, to answer that, because what we're talking about here in light, what is light? Light needs a frame of reference. People go outside and they think, well, I'm in the light, but what is the light they're in?